Hi there, friends. How's it going today? I'm using my second camera here because my main camera took a crap. This seems to happen to me about once a year. But actually, this camera is probably a better quality. It's a little Handycam, Sony Handycam. But that's pretty much irrelevant. That's the icebreaker, the warm up to the video. Opening my voice, blah, 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 talking. You know, people don't realize how much time it takes to really set up and do a video. Not just my thoughts, but where I'm going to make the video, lighting, all these things. Obviously, right now I don't have too much put into it. I'm in my school bus. I've got my lighting up, just my bus lighting, and I just wanted to talk about raising kids for a minute. But it wasn't about young kids. It's really about teenagers, and I want any parents out there, because I've talked about younger kids, raising younger kids, but it's a much different story with teenagers growing up in today's world. And unfortunately, I have to bring in even the much younger kids that are younger than those ages, but there is a major problem with the youth of today becoming depressed, anxious, and suicidal at ages that are just unimaginable when I was a kid. When I was 9, 10 years old, I was running around in the fields playing with my friends or getting beat up by the neighbor kids. Truth is, it didn't really matter whether I was getting picked on or whether I was just having fun somewhere or just roaming by myself. Or like when I was 11 years old, riding my bicycle all the way from Beaverton to Hillsboro or Hillsboro to Beaverton, which was quite far for a kid, on the highway, and just to see my old apartment and then coming back home. Something that I did on my own. Something I did that my parents would have probably shit their pants if they'd actually seen me out on the highway, but they didn't make a big deal about it. It's just something I did. As a kid, I pretty much had a lot of freedom. My brother and I, my brother Nick is, he left home when he was 13, 14, something like that, because my father passed away, died of cancer when I was about 15. He was 12, and soon after that, we took it our own ways, and he went out on the streets, spent time with his friends. Our family did the best that we could, right? And I still talk to him today. He's fine now, but back then we were dealing with the death of our father and with being crazy teenagers, right? And but we didn't have the internet. We didn't have the ability to, just hide for days on a computer. Although, that said, I did have a Nintendo. And for a while, I remember, especially during my early teen years, going and sitting in front of the Nintendo and playing Zelda, The Legend of Zelda, for hours on end, right? And Mario Brothers. But it wasn't something that I used to escape. It was just fun. And after my father died, I remember we skateboarded a lot, and even when I was asked to go to the hospital and told that he might be dying, I still went and skateboarded. And I'm telling you this story for a reason. I want to talk about the issue with teen anxiety and depression, the reasons why I feel that, even in my life, though I've had it rough with losing my father at a young age, and it was tough, at the time, I didn't realize how difficult it really was. It was September when he died. I believe it was September 1st. And September, a week later, is when school starts. And I went to school the first day. And I remember having a conversation with my mom. And I don't recall exactly how it went, but basically we came to the conclusion that I was better off to be tough and just fight through it. There's no point in sitting and weeping and moping. Might as well get back to work. And the teachers and the counselors were like, you don't need to be here. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I need to get away. And at the time I had a mullet, I was a skater, I was a punk, long-haired stoner kid, and I was a troublemaker. Got kicked out of the school the next year. Always chalked it up to being at a yuppie school, not realizing that it was my own fault, and it always was my own fault. Now I acknowledge this. As an adult, a 45-year-old adult who has an 8-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 26-year-old, I watched my oldest son come up through his own times. He's never been a computer guy, he's never been tech savvy or been interested, but he's a fucking amazing guitarist. And he just shreds. When he was 11 years old, he wanted to play guitar, he wanted to play drums when he was like, 6, 7, 8 or something. And so we bought him a drum set. He lost interest, wanted to play guitar. So we got him a guitar, and he's been playing ever since. Started out with AC/DC and all the stuff that he was introduced to through us. And now he's playing Grateful Dead and Fish, things like that. And he's just great. And I'm so proud of him as a human being. But I know that he's been through some hard times. He's going through things that previous generations didn't really have the time to worry about, such as, what's my next job? How is this gig economy going to play out? He's out right now driving for Uber. Uber Eats, I think, right now. And he does what he can, He worked in a warehouse for a while. He's given his blood, plasma. He does what he can do to make money. And, we're living in a time where the next generation, it's really hard for them to have hope for a future. But this is projected down into the younger kids. And the reason why I'm making this isn't so much for the teenagers or even the young men or women, but finding out that kids under 10 are contemplating suicide. I have a hard time not saying that some of this could be attributed to kids taking antidepressants, Somebody we know is taking antidepressants and has had suicidal thoughts recently. And it's Zoloft combined with alcohol. Horrible combination. I've talked with several people about this in the past. Combining any SSRI, or a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, with alcohol can be a horrific combination. But the doctors just want to sell you a prescription, right? And think that they're going to help you. But my point there is that the suicidal thoughts come more from the medication than they do from normal life. The average human has no interest in suicide. It's not something that we contemplate in our own normal state of mind. But if something happens that throws us off, we can see life as very devastating. And I think this is crucial. That one of the most important things that throws kids off today is, for men especially, there's no rite of passage, right? There's no way to say, yeah, I'm moving into adulthood now, and this is when I become a man. Now, for women, they will have their own interesting transition into womanhood. But the one thing that fascinated me, and especially within research of kids, is that males and females have equal levels of aggression. I was always taught growing up that men were more aggressive, women were more passive. Complete, absolute nonsense. There's no truth to it whatsoever. You have to define what aggression is. Males are more physically aggressive. Females tend to be more mentally aggressive. And this is usually because mothers have to protect their young historically. So therefore, regardless of how we're trying to change roles, and we don't want to argue gender roles, women are much more protective of their nest. And so can be more aggressive in different ways. Women are more aggressive towards other women. Men are more aggressive towards other men, but they get over it quicker. It's really interesting that way. But that's important to see in young kids, regardless of how we want to deny it as adults. In young kids, we have to realize that women and men, boys and girls, can both be aggressive. But the biggest problem isn't from aggression. We like to blame video games, something else, blame the violent movies. But that may be part of it, maybe. But really, with social media, what we have is FOMO, the fear of missing out, which is a real issue with people. The kids are addicted to their phones. They're addicted to seeing who posted what. And a kid's life can be destroyed over one Facebook post today. I think one of the biggest problems we have is treating kids like they're fragile. Because kids are not fragile. Kids are fucking strong. Kids are tough. They're resilient. But if we tell them that they are fragile, then they're much more likely to use that as a justification to act fragile. Because we see this in adults too. It's very important. So how do we overcome this? We need to expose our kids to chaos and unpredictability. And you don't have to be a soccer mom or a perfect dad. You don't have to always be there to answer every question and make sure that every moment you're on the floor with them playing games. Believe me, as a stay-at-home dad for as many years as I've been here, I've learned some valuable lessons about keeping my distance, getting my own space. I have an office that's separate from the house. The kids know not to bug me when I tell them not to bug me, whether I'm making a video, doing something else. That's something that a lot of parents today might think, oh no, my kids should always have full access to me whenever they want. No, not at all. Kids who grow up with too much freedom, it backfires. And I guarantee it. We, with Gen X, realize this. This is what you would call the snowflake generation. And it was a real thing, and it is a real thing. There are kids now who have safe spaces in college where they're not able to talk about certain subjects, or where if a subject comes up in a class, they give them a trigger warning so they can go hang out in a room with puppies and recover from their fears. Look, the real world is much harsher than the bullshit you might see in college. It's important that we realize this. There's a reason why people laugh at this. Because if you're that sensitive, you better fucking toughen up. Because the real world is much harder than learning about history and people who were killed. But that's a different story altogether. I think it's important to expose kids to chaos and unpredictability for the same reason that our immune systems need to be exposed to germs and to viruses and bacteria in order to function. It's the reason that even though COVID is rampant, I still let my kids play with the neighbor kids. My kid's been sneezing and coughing. Maybe he's got a cold, maybe he doesn't. But I'm not going to live my life in a bubble, right? Because I know that we have to be exposed to a certain extent. We have to take some risks in our lives. Our mental health is just as important as our physical health. Our mental health is directly related to our physical health. So yeah, our immune system is crucial. We need to keep it functioning, just like we need to keep ourselves exposed to criticism without getting stuck in a bubble. Believe me, on YouTube, with the channel I have, talking about subjects I have, even though controversial subjects may be relatively far between, believe me, I get my feedback on it. And I'm open to it. I'm totally open to it. Criticism has made me stronger. And that's, I think, what kids need today. More criticism. And it sounds wrong, because if you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I'd say no. Kids need to be treated with respect and reverence and whatever it might be. But there's always part of me who's known that kids need to have tough love as well. And as I said, rites of passage have disappeared, so we're kind of stuck with saying, by the way, you're a man now. You're out of school. You need to go get a job. You need to pay for your college. You got all these student loans. Better deal with it, man. And so for my kids, my son who just went into middle school but hasn't been there yet, my youngest son is 8 years old. And he is in second grade, but he hasn't been to school in 8 months because of COVID. Tomorrow is his first day back to school. And it's going to be a totally different world at his school. And there was part of me that said, oh, I don't want him to have to go back to school when everybody has to wear masks. You can't play on the playground like you did before. You know, there's more risks, but so fucking what? You know? You've got to let kids do their thing because they're kids. And that's what kids do. And by golly, us as parents are exposed to something, then that's so be it, you know. I'm not worried about getting sick as much as I'm worried about him not enjoying himself. But that's another part of it. He needs to be strong. So I guess to come to a close here, you know, it's like, I remember I've talked to people who think about kids of today and say, you know, kids of today, all they have is their internet. They're always playing games. They're always looking at a pad or a device or a phone. What are they going to do when the power goes out or there's no internet or, you know, whatever it may be? And what I've seen when that happens is my kids go outside and play. When there's no internet, they quickly adapt. Kids adapt much quicker than adults. So my point to close here is that when we want to think we need to protect the kids, really we need to protect ourselves, because the kids will figure it out. If the internet goes out, if the power goes out, my family will be fine. We'll just go, oh well, let's go out and, play board games, something like that. It's not that big of a deal. We can change. We can change who we are to fit the situation. Kids do it really well. And I love my kids. I'd do anything for them. But there's a certain amount of tough love that you have to give them, of course. But also, you have to give yourself a certain amount of patience. Because having children isn't just what you're teaching them. It's what they're teaching you. They will scream, they will run around, they'll jump over your head and make the dog stomp your face because they're running around in circles at 11 o'clock at night. It may not be appropriate. You got to send them to bed eventually. But it's a valuable lesson in understanding for parents as well, to realize that, I don't know, we're all kids inside, right? Just as you get older, you become a little more chill. I don't know. Point being, that's all I got. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. Let me know your thoughts on having kids. Let me know if you have kids and what you think about being a parent. And or if you're young, your feelings on what it's like to be a kid. Thanks to my patrons. Thanks to my subs. Over and out. Peace.